What's going on, FA Nation? Justin Fensterman here, along with James Grande, and it is time to get ready to begin our weeks by winning some quiche and dominating in DFS. It's the DFS NBA live stream here on FantasyAlarm.com. Going to go over John and Pemba's playbook that you can get on the site, getting you ready. James, what's good, man? 8 games. You ready to dominate?
Yeah, you said something about quiche. True story. Never have had quiche. Don't even know what it looks like, tastes like.
It's got eggs in it. I have not eaten it either, actually. So we got something in common.
That's one thing we have in common in our lives.
You want to know something else that we have in common, too?
Let's hear it.
Having to deal with injuries in the NBA every single day.
That's true.
So, James, take a 10-minute break, eat some more honeydew, and let me read you everything we're dealing with when it comes to injuries for this 8-game slate here. Karl-Anthony Towns waiting for that to become official, still doubtful, hasn't been ruled out, waiting for him to return from the COVID. So right now listed as doubtful. I don't think he plays. We'll give you an update if we find it. Anthony Davis is going to sit tonight. Russell Westbrook's resting along with John Wall, Eric Gordon. All three are out. Chris Paul is questionable with a hamstring injury. D'Angelo Russell still impacted by that quad issue. He's questionable. Jamal Murray's questionable with the knee. OG Anunoby is still out with the calf injury. Lauri Markkanen is going to be out for not only tonight, but the next few weeks too. Devontae Graham dealing with a groin strain. He is out. Brandon Clark, calf injury. He's out. LaMarcus Aldridge is out with a hip injury. Otto Porter Jr. is out with a back injury. Maledon is out for the Oklahoma City Thunder for health protocol reasons. James Wiseman's still out for the Warriors. Gary Harris is out with a thigh injury for the Nuggets. Mike Muscala dealing with a concussion. He's out. D'Anthony Melton is out. And then Juan Hernan Gomez, due to some conditioning issues, he's questionable. Eric Paschall, also with a knee issue, is questionable. James, I don't think we have enough injuries to deal with tonight.
That generally hasn't been the case at all, Fensty, where just nobody's hurt. We're not waiting on any news, and everything's kosher going into lineup lock.
Yes, very much, and I know a lot about what that is. So let's talk about something else, James, that we both like very much, and that's because everybody's got to like it. Luka Doncic versus the pathetic Minnesota Timberwolves. You know, there are 8 games on the slate. What can't Luka do? But what can't Luka do against a backcourt that's pretty much non-existent anyway? It's banged up. I mean, no disrespect to Malik Beasley. I like what he's done. He's not stopping Luka. And this is a situation, James, where you can tell me differently because there's another player who down the road, I'm going to tell you, I love in this matchup too. Wink, wink. But when it comes to Luka, are you worried about a blowout all in this matchup, or are you all systems a go for Luka tonight?
I mean, I think it's reasonable to think there could be a blowout. The Vegas line has moved to 10 in favor of Dallas. They're at home. We don't know the status of D'Angelo Russell, but it seems like he'll usually play on these games where it's not back-to-back, so I'd assume he plays, but, obviously not getting my hopes up. If Russell plays, I think this game could obviously stay closer. I don't think that's, news to anyone. He's a good basketball player, and Minnesota just has a better chance with their best player as of right now. Towns is obviously their best player when he's healthy, but I think it's definitely worrisome. If you worry about it, there's a lot of firepower that you can use on this slate, Fancy. So if you are worried about a blowout, maybe we just limit Luka to tournaments, and we look at the Giannis's of the world. We look at Jokic. We look at LeBron for cash, maybe even Steph Curry. But if you are worried, limit your exposure to Luka in tournaments. I think we should be fine in all formats, but if the slightest little worry, there's enough firepower elsewhere to pivot to if you're a little scared.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Curry before. If you want to pay up, I mean, the Spurs are horrible defenders in their backcourt. And you know what? They're just the problem with the Spurs, Grande. I feel like when it comes to their build, they're building from the outside in. And that's the problem because they have no front court, number one. And number two, I kind of thought that their backcourt was more disciplined defensively, but they really aren't, man. I mean, even when watching, but why doesn't this team rotate nicely? And now they've got Derek White, who's been back in the mix. So hopefully something like that starts to happen. Otherwise, they need to be putting more of Devin Vassell on that perimeter because, dude, they play no defense. It kind of shocks me. A pop team that's just horrible at a certain position kind of shocks me.
Yeah, 29th in allowing fantasy points. So they allow them, and that's to point guard specifically. So they allow them in bunches, and we're getting Curry here in an optimal position. He's looked phenomenal lately. This is like Steve Kerr even went out and said this is the best version of Curry he's ever seen. And we're talking about a guy who's won an MVP in multiple finals and yada yada yada. So pretty high praise, but I mean he's gone for 50 plus twice in like a month. So and that's 50 plus actual. So you could definitely go to Curry here as a pivot off Luka. More, I like it more on DraftKings, but I understand it on both sites. You get that 3-point bonus if Curry hits 10 threes over on DraftKings. Man, I mean, those extra 5 points can carry you to the winner's circle.
Let's go down to the mid tier because it seems like I'm going to be paying up for that point guard spot. I'm going to ask you someone else in a second, but when it comes to the middle tier, Grande, who are you looking at specifically for point guard?
I mean, I definitely think LaMelo Ball, Devontae Graham is ruled out. He's been really good. The scoring, I think, has been what's the most interesting thing. I mean, 3 straight games of 19 plus actual points. We know how peripherally good he is. We know that he's a very good passer. We know he's a big guard who rebounds well. But he's been scoring and he's been shooting the ball exceptionally well. I mean, 44% from 3 in 5 straight games. So I do like LaMelo Ball quite a bit. I'm not so much on Rozier like I was the other day, or aka Sunday against Washington. I get it, and I think it's a nice tournament pivot off of LaMelo. He was $5,600 on Sunday. I like that price better. And then Darius Garland, I think, is just rock solid. John nailed it. I mean, he's just good for cash. Like, right. It's a really tough matchup if Chris Paul plays. If Chris Paul doesn't play, I think there's deficiencies in that Phoenix backcourt defensively. I mean, we saw Chris Paul hold Kemba to 4 for 20 on Sunday. Garland is kind of scoring dependent at times, so like that would be tough if Paul played. But if Paul sits, I think Darius Garland becomes even more intriguing than he already is, and it doesn't look like anyone's going to play him. And then someone who John doesn't have in the playbook that I want to give some love to is Dennis Schroeder, who we know is going to be playing without Anthony Davis. And, you know, LeBron needs a Batman, or LeBron needs a Robin. Sorry. He is Batman, that's for sure. So I'm willing to take a shot on Schroeder. $5,300
I love
on
it.
FanDuel, and he is 57 on DK. I think that's also too cheap. I think the spot, too, against OKC is very intriguing. And the spread in that game, yes, 10.5, but are they 10.5 point favorites without Anthony Davis? I mean, it's a good supporting cast that's obviously led by LeBron, but OKC's been pesky. So I think they can keep that game close with SGA, with Horford back. So I do like Schroeder quite a bit, 5,300 on FanDuel.
Don't forget, I mean, don't really play this narrative, but plenty of people do. It's also a revenge game for him, too.
The revenge narrative as well. True.
But here's the thing. And when I made this decision, I'm trying to remember if I realized that Davis was out yet or not when I was putting the starting 5 together. I was struggling between him and the guy that I actually put in that is not in the playbook of John and Pemba's, but I still have some intrigue. What do you think of Drew Holiday? He's been playing better. If you're telling me, I mean, in this matchup against Denver, a banged up backcourt, can he get to 40 on DraftKings? I think he can.
So, like, I don't hate Drew Holiday. I would have, like, when you talk about price point, like, I definitely think FanDuel is a little too pricey for me at 8,200. Like, I think he can get 5X, and I think he makes – look, the game environment is tremendous, especially, you know, Denver just allowed a boatload of points to the Kings, and Milwaukee's obviously a better offense. I would rather play LaMelo on FanDuel for $400 cheaper. I think LaMelo provides more upside all around, and especially with the scoring. I think Drew Holiday is safe, and I think I prefer him more in cash. Like Morant, I do think is pretty interesting tournaments. There's no Tyus Jones. No D'Anthony Melton, sorry. So, like, Morant is interesting around that price point as well. I'm on the fence about Holiday. I like the game environment. I like where he's been at lately. 40 fantasy points per game over his last 6 is very intriguing. Cash games. I can get behind Drew Holiday in cash more than I would be interested in playing him in tournaments.
Yep, I will say this when it comes to value as well. We noted that Westbrook is out, so John does have Ish Smith in there too, which is sub 5K on FanDuel. So that's someone that, if you want, again, you're building stars and scrubs. He's a pretty big scrub, but there are not a lot of options in Washington. So anyone that gets 20 minutes in that game, I'll give him a shot when it comes to that team. But someone we know is pretty much the team, or at least 65% of it, is Bradley Beal, because as we move over to shooting guard here, high-priced guy going up against your Bulls, Grande, another team really doesn't play defense, just punts defense. So when it comes to paying up and deciding who to pay up for, where are you at with Beal with no Westbrook on the floor?
I mean, it's just funny to see Bradley Beal, who has a 40% usage rate without Russell Westbrook this year, projected to be 13% owned or less on both sites. That's just so funny, because I get the price tag. I get all the top spend ups across this slate. We mentioned Luka, Giannis, Jokic, LeBron without Davis. Like, yeah, they're all great. There's no denying that. But Bradley Beal has 60 actual in a game this year. None of those other guys have 60 actual in a game this year. Bradley Beal can score 50 actual against the Bulls. I don't think we would be surprised. John and I and yourself were talking about it before we hopped on air. This game has the highest current total on the board in terms of over-under at 236.5. And that's down from where it opened to 239.5. So,
and I find that interesting, by the way, considering the Bulls really don't have that many options on their team. I mean,
that's just how bad. That's just it. It's more, I think, it just speaks to how bad Washington is, Fancy. Like, that's how bad they are. Like, they're just projecting there to be no defense and everyone just pushing it up the floor and scoring.
That's terrible, because you're literally telling me there's no Markkanen, there's no Carter. This team is rolling out guys like Garrett Temple and your boy and John's boy, Denzel Valentine.
Yep.
I mean, dude, and there's still Thad Young, and they're still projected to go that high. Something's wrong with that.
I mean, so, like, there are also two teams that are first and third in pace. So we're going to get an up-tempo game. Like, this game is you are going to get long rebounds, and they're going to push the ball. That's just what's going to happen. And then when they're pushing the ball, we have the 29th ranked defense in Washington, and we have the 24th ranked defense in Chicago in terms of defensive rating. So fast-paced game, no defense, elite shooting guards in Beal and LaVine. And that's what they're banking on. They're banking on LaVine and Beal scoring 30-plus each. And then these ancillary pieces in Thad Young and Rui Hachimura and these guys are chipping in because nobody's going to be guarding them regardless. So
right.
I get what you're saying, but the pace, the lack of defense just makes up for the star power that may or may not be lacking in some people's opinions.
So let me ask you this here. Based off everything you just said, why would I, when looking at FanDuel, spend $2,000 more on Beal
than LaVine? Yes. I think that, one, you could ownership, if you do have our ownership package, which is a great tool to have leaning into if you're especially a tournament player, because our ownership is based on tournaments and you get an idea of who's going to be highly owned versus who are some of the guys you can leverage against. It looks like everyone's going to play LaVine, Fensty, and it doesn't look like a lot of people are playing Beal. If Beal gets you 50 actual and goes for 65, 70 fantasy points, you're in the driver's seat because you played him at 10% ownership compared to LaVine, who may go for 50 fantasy points, but at 30% ownership, Beal got you 70 at 10. So you're winning playing Beal at lower ownership than you are at LaVine. Honestly, why not play them both on FanDuel? Because you have to play two shooting guards anyway. A game stack in this environment is, I think, going under the radar because, again, We have so much star power. This game is everyone's just playing the value here. We're going to talk about plenty of value in this game. We've already talked about Ish Smith. You've already mentioned Denzel Valentine. You mentioned Garrett Temple. Levine, yes, but nobody's mentioning Bradley Beal. So I think you could play them both, especially on FanDuel. I think you can play them both on DraftKings. $9K for Bradley Beal is 45 fantasy points for 5X. He might go for 45 actual. I've said that like 4 times now, speaking it into existence. But I do think there's merit to playing them both on FanDuel. I do think there's merit to playing them on DraftKings in a game stack because this game, again, highest total on the board, no defense, first and third in pace, respectively. So, like, they're just going to be running up and down the floor and maximizing their possession. So it's really hard not to have not just a piece of this pie, but multiple pieces of the pie. You might want the whole pie.
So, like Marie Antoinette once said, you can't always have your cake and eat it too. So we're not going to go over all the high-priced guys, but Houston's got some guys out, and while a lot of that focus is going to be on Beal and Levine, Victor Oladipo's got a solo spot right now here, Grande. Against Charlotte, the pathetic Hornets. Come on, brother. Sub 8K on FanDuel, man. I can go with Mr. Levine or even pay more for Mr. Beal. But Vic, he's by himself, brother.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of Oladipo Cousins pick and roll action tonight.
And,
yes. I like the sounds. Yeah, I like the sound of that. And Oladipo officially starting at point guard tonight. So definitely interesting. And it's definitely a nice pivot off of, Levine or Beal, because I do think a lot of people will go this route. I think he's priced nice. We're looking for 40 fantasy points, but I think there's 50-point upside here.
And I'm going to say this. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I saw a little note come out that he's resting tomorrow in the back-to-back. So they're going to let him loose.
Right.
They're going to let him loose tonight. No worries about the 25 minutes. What the hell? This guy's playing 30 tonight, Grande.
I'm down. It might be even 35 if this is a competitive game. And obviously, being a fantasy point per minute guy, being a 34% usage kind of guy, I can definitely get behind that. I like the sounds of some Victor Oladipo tonight.
So let's talk about some value shooting guards here, because shooting guards is a very nice spot tonight. And we're not always able to say that. Tonight is a good spot. So who do you like at value?
Anthony Edwards is definitely interesting. John has him here in the playbook. I think.
Well, that's John's guy.
That is John's guy.
But him.
It has been better lately, especially since he's entered the starting rotation. And again, there could be no D'Lo. He put up 40 fantasy points last time out. He has never seen a shot that he doesn't like, and I think that's a key element here, especially if this game. I mean, he's going to play whether it stays competitive or not. He's just kind of in this rotation now, and they want to get a good look at Anthony Edwards, and he's going to take a lot of shots, so I like him. The Houston guys are interesting. Sterling Brown, David Nwaba. I mean, like, they've both been playing pretty good minutes. Nwaba played 22 minutes his last time out. That was with John Wall. Now a point guard on FanDuel, which I find interesting. But Sterling Brown, 27 minutes the last time Wall was out. So he's in play.
And it's a cake matchup for the Houston guards.
Yeah,
whoever gets in there.
Right, and it's a cake matchup. So I definitely like both those guys, and I'll throw the Dallas guys into the equation too. Both Hardaway and Josh Richardson, 51, and Richardson's 47 on FanDuel. Get the Minnesota matchup. And, Hardaway's coming off the bench now.
Best thing they ever did, by the way.
It's a good thing for him to be coming off the bench. He's playing in that second unit with Porzingis when Porzingis checks back into the game. So he gets to, a little more ball handling there for Hardaway. So, and Richardson, 4,700, he's been playing big minutes, and he had 2 big games. He kind of let us down the last 2 games against Golden State, but 17 actual last time against Golden State. So, don't hate that at 4,700. So I think I would put.
Let me ask you this about these two, because especially for the starting five, which is the video, for those that don't know, the video that we put together, one of us, part of the NBA team here, fantasyalarm.com, puts together just five. It's not an example lineup by any stretch, but it's five players that you like that could be part of your build, good matchups. So when it comes to something like toggling between the Dallas guard forwards with Richardson and Hardaway, here's the thing. Hardaway seems to be a bit more expensive. He's got the bigger scoring ceiling. However, the multi-category production ceiling, that goes to Richardson. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, we know Hardaway can score 30. If his shot's falling, he can score 30 actual. We haven't really seen that from Richardson since he left Miami. So, yeah, I think that's fair. And Richardson's definitely good defensively. He can get you 2-3 steals, and on FanDuel, that's super valuable at 4,700. So I definitely agree with you there.
All right, let's move on to the threes here, because we got LeBron James there, no Anthony Davis. You got to like that against Oklahoma City. I mean, is that where you're looking, or are we going value at the spot? Because there's a lot of mid-tier options we could go with.
Yeah, so I think this position's really interesting tonight, because you could definitely spend up on LeBron without Davis. I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, he's given us a lot of fantasy points in the last two, 60+ in both. Aided by a double overtime last time out, sure. But he did put up a triple-double the game before, so I definitely think we can go LeBron. Gordon Hayward, for whatever reason, just is never priced appropriately. He should be over 8K. He's not. And on
especially
FanDuel,
with Graham out, too. That's just going to add more to his shots.
Right. And he was out Sunday, Graham, and they didn't do anything to Hayward's price for Monday. So, that's a miss. 7,600 on FanDuel just seems silly. I mean, we're talking about 39, 47, 41, 35, 41, 34. That's his fantasy production the last 6 games. I mean, talk about consistency at 7,600.
And it's Houston.
And it's again, we mentioned, and it's Houston. It's a good game environment. The only thing we should worry about possibly is a back-to-back, and teams have looked pretty poor on back-to-backs this year. That's widespread across the NBA. Chris Middleton, for some reason, and I get Milwaukee's been pretty good lately, and Middleton's minutes have taken a hit because of it, and his fantasy production has taken a hit because of it, but he's $7,200 on FanDuel, which is just, it's kind of criminal, especially if this game stays close. And something that John and I talked about on the podcast, if Murray and Harris both sit, we're going to be looking at a starting lineup of Monty Morris, Will Barton, and Michael Porter. So Middleton's going to be seeing Barton and Porter, that's where they've been deficient all year long. I want 100% of Chris Middleton if I know that Michael Porter Jr. is defending him. As much as we like Michael Porter Jr. offensively, he is a very big. He's what's his name from the liability from not the replacements. What am I looking for? PD replaces him.
Allen.
Allen in Remember the Titans at corner. That's what Michael Porter is on defense. You're a liability, son. That's Ryan Michael Porter. Gosling? That he's in this scenario. Michael Porter Jr. is Ryan Gosling in Remember the Titans. I think it's perfect.
Forget him, Allen. Go in.
I think it's perfect, and I think it's a perfect comparison, honestly. So if Middleton is getting Michael Porter or Allen, I would love him. And I actually love Porter on the flip side if he's starting. He played 34 minutes. He looked like crap. He didn't make anything, but hard not to like him if he's starting. And then Denzel Valentine is everyone's chalk. I mean, he's starting, played a whole bunch of minutes, did very well. He's very good at everything, even though he has one of the ugliest jumpers you'll ever see. But he just can't stay healthy. So as long as he stays healthy, I think, rock and roll Denzel Valentine under 5K across the industry.
Yep. I mean, we've been talking about him all day, Grande.
All day long.
Too much time we've spent on Denzel Valentine today. I'll just tell you that much. Well, it is Valentine's Day coming up soon. So, hey, don't forget about that. I just saved a lot of you from getting locked out of your house. You're welcome. Let's move on to power forwards here. because you've got Giannis on the board, but then you've got my guy tonight going up against Minnesota. Double, baby. Kristaps Porzingis. Who's stopping him? Who? Name it. You want? I know. Like, let's say Towns, like I said this in the video too, in the story 5, miraculously plays. He's not. Let's say he does. Even better. I love it. Perfect. The Cole Towns, who's already a horrible defender, no one's stopping this guy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The only thing that's stopping him is a blowout. Let's be real. That's about the extent we need. Like, he'll go for 45, maybe 50 fantasy points if this game can stay close enough. Just like it's like Luka. If you don't feel comfortable playing Porzingis in cash, limit your exposure to tournaments because this game could blow out. But it's a good tournament play because if you think Minnesota stays close, then Porzingis could go for 50. So I definitely love Porzingis if you're pivoting off Giannis. Also, I don't know if I'm going to pivot off Giannis. I think if you're playing multiple lineups, you should definitely get your exposure. I mean, the guy has been good, man. He's been good. Looked subpar against Cleveland, but the second game. But, I mean, we're just getting, like, peak Giannis and multi-categories that we weren't getting earlier in the year. So if you do want to spend up on Giannis, by all means, he's elite as they come.
So we just gave you the 2 plays of the night at power forward if you're spending up. But if you are looking to spend down, who else are you turning to, Grande? Because for me, I mean, someone that I'd be looking at, especially with, Otto Porter still gone, I've liked what I've seen from Patrick Williams. The growth, what we've heard about in preseason, it's all coming to fruition now in the last few weeks. I like Patrick Williams. I am shocked that he's priced this cheap. Aren't you?
Yeah, I definitely am. And, I mean, I was shocked when they took him 4th overall. Let's just go back a little bit. And so was a lot of people.
Who'd you want?
Not Patrick Williams. I don't know. Different discussion.
Okay.
Discussion for a different day. But the offense was supposed to be his deficiency, and that hasn't been the case. I mean, we've scored double figures now in 5 straight, 6 of 7. He scored 16 plus in 2 straight. The rebounds have been there. The peripherals in terms of blocks and steals have been there. And he's still under 5K on FanDuel, which is criminal. So I do like Patrick Williams, and I think an approach, if you aren't spending up at power forward, if you're not playing Porzingis, if you're not playing Giannis, I think you double punt under 5K here, and you play Williams and you play Kuzma, who on FanDuel is 4,900. Kuzma has looked damn good lately, which we know he can, right? We've seen it throughout his career. He's a very talented offensive player, especially when his shot is falling from the outside. He has a very smooth jumper, but he's also a big man who can attack the rim as well, which I don't want to lose sight of. Good rebounder, can do things in other categories. I think Kuzma and Williams is a really nice value approach, but I do want to give some love to John with the Paul Millsap call, because we talked about it last night. Millsap is really good, and it's kind of been this way since he went to Denver. He has been really good at home, Fensty. In terms of fantasy production, well, just in terms of production in general, he's shooting 54% at home compared to 43% on the road. He's shooting 43% from 3 at home, 37% on the road. He's scoring 3 more points per game. He's scoring 4 more fantasy points per game. And this could be a scenario where he's forced to play more minutes if Michael Porter's starting, because then JaMychal Green could be backing up the 3, the 4, and the 5.
Right.
And Millsap could possibly, play 25 minutes, which he played 32 in the Lakers game when JaMychal Green started at small forward. So it's not crazy to think Millsap could play more in a competitive game against Milwaukee. And not to mention, this is one of the best games on the board in terms of totals, and Milwaukee being a 4-point spread on the road, 4-point favorite on the road, excuse me. So I do think Millsap is interesting, and I'll throw JaMychal Green out there as well. I think both of them warrant some love, because JaMychal Green, last 3 games, 24, 28, 26 minutes. And we know he could fill it up in a short period of time if his shot's falling. So I think both the Nuggets power forwards here at home go underlooked because a lot of people play Patrick Williams and a lot of people play Kuzma, and a lot of people just play them both, right? So I do think the Nuggets guys are contrarian pivots off of chalky Williams and chalky Kuzma.
Yeah, John said it best before I even saw his description in the playbook. I mean, one of the things he says is Millsap, 25 minutes. And that's kind of what I was thinking. Well, can he get to 25? Okay, that checks out. Green shooting has been unbelievable this year.
Yep.
It has been incredible overall from the arc. He is worth every penny that Denver has. A true piece of depth that has been very helpful to this team that has been without guys like Porter early on. Yep. So just keeps one of the deeper teams deep. Let's move on to the center position because leading that depth right there, Mr. Jokic, the Joker. What do you think about him? Because, again, this is a situation where when it comes to centers, an expense, you might want to be spending down, but there's not a lot of true options that I'm feeling great about. That's the problem.
So I am on the other side of the fence there, Fency, because as much as I love Jokic, and I'm team Nikola Jokic for MVP. If they make a run in the West, I mean, just the guy has been incredible. There are two other guys. I'll even go three at certain price points that I just can't ignore.
Can I answer?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, let's go through them.
All right, can you call me?
Yep, Mr. Fensterman, right. Go ahead.
I'm only going to give you one, Mr. Grande. DeMarcus freaking Cousins.
Yeah, and that's the chalk, right? Because the guy he's crazy. Like, in terms of, like, usage rates and when people are off the floor, Cousins, 27% usage rate without Wall and Gordon. He has 1.3 fantasy point per minute average in that span as well. And he's only $6,000. We need 30 fantasy points from Cousins when every time he's played extended run, he's got us 35 or more, right? So very hard to ignore Cousins. And it's Charlotte, the matchup that we attack the most. Mr. Fensterman, would you like to answer number 2 for me?
Ooh, and who's to go? Well, naturally, with Mr. Markin and Mr. Carter out, shocker, Bulls with injuries, Mr. Young is still in play, isn't he? At least on DK?
So I'm going to go... You're 1 for 2 right now, Fency, because wow. I think Andre, at the same price point on FanDuel, Andre Drummond stands out so much to me, and we're talking about $7,200 for Andre Drummond, a guy that we have seen priced at $9,000, $8,000 consistently, and we were a little concerned about the minutes, earlier this month, especially with the acquisition of Jared Allen. But the last 2 games, 29 and 30 minutes, okay? Then last game, the 30 minutes, he goes for 46 fantasy points. And FanDuel says, you know what? Goes for 46? I have an idea. Let's lower his price to $7,200 and make things just crazy. Everyone just running for the hills. Because, I had this discussion with John on the podcast last night. How do you not play DeMarcus Cousins at 6,000 and he goes for 50? Well, yes, totally true. But Andre Drummond against, a flat-footed DeAndre Ayton at 72 could go for 50 or 60 if he plays 30 minutes. And, that's your answer. That's how you don't play DeMarcus Cousins. So it's very frustrating that you can only play one center on FanDuel, and you could play 2 on DraftKings. So you do that. And then I think Harrell would, at 5,200, now no Anthony Davis, pretty good matchup against Al Horford. So center is really deep. And we did not give Jokic a single bit of praise in that whole thing, and he went for 88 fantasy points the last time out. So center is a problem tonight, Fancy, because I don't know how I'm playing multiple lineups on FanDuel just to get exposure to both Cousins and to Andre Drummond.
One guy that we didn't talk about that I got to ask you about, what about Jakob Purdle?
Generally, I would say he's in play, just like I would generally say Naz Reid is in play, because I do think they're both viable options. But again, let's go to FanDuel, right? Jakob Purdle is priced at 58. there's no chance I'm not finding $200 and going to DeMarcus Cousins. I mean, right? I mean, let's call a spade a spade here, Fancy. Like, I'm just going to DeMarcus Cousins.
You're right, man. You're right.
And then Naz Reid, 61, great matchup. Dallas struggles against the front court, specifically Maxi Kleber is good peripherally, not very sound defensively. Neither is Willie Cauley-Stein and at the center spot when he checks into the game. And Naz Reid coming off a big game, especially offensively. But again, $6,100 on FanDuel. I'm going to play DeMarcus Cousins. It just is that scenario. The pivots that I would consider are Drummond. I would pay for Jokic in a tournament to just be different. I wouldn't do it in cash. You play DeMarcus Cousins in cash and you move on. And I would consider Montrezl Harrell in tournaments to save some cash, especially if I'm like stacking Lakers. Like I could play LeBron, Schroeder, Harrell in a lineup, and I'd be cool with that.
That's beautiful.
In a tournament, I think it's viable. Maybe run it back with SGA. I don't hate that stack, but most roads lead back to Drummond, and most roads lead back to Cousins for me.
Yeah, but all roads lead back to fantasyalarm.com. So get in the chat and get your lineup set. You can follow James on Twitter at @the_real_Grande. You can follow me at Fensty Sports. Again, we're here for you. Let's get those lineups set. Let's snap some necks, but most importantly, cash some checks. Let's win